Clearwater County is a large municipality in west central Alberta, covering more than 18,000 square kilometers. The regional tourism name for the area is David Thompson Country. Highlights include Nordegg, Abraham Lake, Burnstick Lake, Crimson Lake, Crescent Falls, Ram Falls, Siffler Falls, the North Saskatchewan River, and the Yahatinda area. Popular activities include hiking, camping, quad and snowmobile trails, canoeing, and kayaking. Much of Clearwater County is a wilderness area, and over the last several years we have seen a large increase in visitors who may not be familiar with recreating in remote wilderness conditions. This discussion reviews some of the safety incidents that occurred in 2020 in Clearwater County. We are sharing this information so that our visitors can have an enjoyable and safe time in Clearwater County. So thank you everyone for coming to discuss safety in Clearwater County in 2020. We have a few different incidents to discuss, so I'll get started with introductions. Steve, if you could go first.
Perfect. Thanks, Jerry. Steve Debian, Regional Fire Chief with Clearwater Regional Fire Rescue Services.
Okay. Eric?
My name is Eric Brownrigg, Conservation Officer, Environmental Enforcement Branch in Rocky Mountain House.
Jennifer?
Jennifer Larson with Rocky SAR. I'm treasurer, HEC team lead, and also mountain rescue team.
Okay, and Terry?
Terry Miller. I'm the sergeant of the Clearwater County Highway Patrol Unit.
And myself, I'm Jerry Pratt. I'm the Economic Development Officer for Clearwater County, and I'm also responsible for promoting tourism in David Thompson Country. So in 2020, we saw a large growth in people coming out here and enjoying the area. And I don't think we have specific numbers saying how many people came, but we saw that the parking lots were overflowing. The campgrounds, for the most part, were full all days of the week. I know actually Alberta Environment and Parks asked me to even stop promoting Siffler Falls and Crescent Falls because there were so many people there. And we want people to be safe, but as people are coming out there experiencing our area for the first time, we did see, unfortunately, some incidents that happened. I'd like just to discuss some of those so that we can try to help people know beforehand what they might be running into as they come out here. Of course, the most tragic incident of all was happened at Crescent Falls. I don't know who would like to be first to go into describing a little bit about what happened at Crescent Falls. That'd be appropriate for Rocky SAR. Jennifer?
Yeah, I could elaborate a bit. We had a couple different incidents there this year. So we had a missing person, and then we had a dislocated knee, as well as the tragedy of the three family members that passed away. Especially the one access was really hard during the long weekend, and the number of vehicles that were there. That was the one with the dislocated knee. Even if we wanted to kind of do a helicopter rescue at that one, it would have been difficult. So we went to our ropes. As for the tragedy of the three that drowned, that one was difficult. People got too close to the water, and because the water level was low, the hydraulics there sucked them underneath.
So they were wading into the pool under the waterfall, right?
Yeah, there's video that was released in the media, so showing just up to that point. Okay. So there's a lot of water coming over that falls, which makes it dangerous.
And I know I get sent pictures, honestly, from a lot of people enjoying Crescent Falls, but many of them actually sitting on the edge of the cliff. Do we know how far of a drop that is?
I don't know offhand. Personally, I stay further back. Just anywhere this is like Crescent Falls. It's a very well-known place, or really publicized, I guess. There's lots of falls within the Clearwater County that are dangerous or just as dangerous. Anywhere in nature, we have to respect kind of what's there and be careful as we approach an edge of a waterfall or a cliff fan or wherever it is, and just kind of be cautious and be overly cautious, I guess.
Okay.
I guess also just, based on our experience, knowledge, or training, kind of venture out within what we know.
Jerry, I think in particular with Crescent Falls, a lot of the general public was unaware that there is cell service down below the falls. Like as soon as you drop down onto the road, there is no cell service. And that area is actually 27 kilometers from Nordegg. So the nearest emergency responders would be 27 kilometers away. So you're looking at a response time of 30-ish minutes, 25 to 30 minutes to get responders out there.
At a best.
At best.
Yeah. I think a lot of people don't understand how much of a wilderness we are. People enjoy that we don't have a lot of services, a lot of people, but associated with that is we don't have a lot of services out in that area. It's a big, big area. I will say one thing. I was talking with a Rocky Search and Rescue member a while back, and one thing they said at Crescent Falls, and it's applicable to all the other falls as well, is they watch people trying to cross the river. Actually, somewhat, they feel close to the falls. And those rivers, they're going pretty quickly. And if they get anywhere close to your knees, they can sweep you out. And if you're too close, you don't have very long to try to recover. Again, that's sitting on the edge of the falls just sort of makes me cringe every time I see the pictures as people send them in. It's pretty awesome to have people's feet hanging over. Nice pictures, but from a safety point of view, they make me nervous.
It was really incredible to actually see after that incident and how publicized that incident was on multiple occasions. That and Eric and Jen, please correct me if I'm wrong with this, but how many people continued to go into that pool at the base of the falls? Like there seemed to be nonstop.
Yeah, I was almost, I don't want to say immediate, but once the park reopened after, because Crescent Falls Provincial Recreation Area was closed for a brief period of time as a result of the tragedy. But once it opened up, it was, people still were wanting to get that picture for Instagram or bragging rights or what have you. And it was almost, I don't know if they were waiting, but I know people were heading down to the base of the falls within a week at least, if not sooner.
And Alberta Environment and Parks actually has signage up discouraging people from going to that lower section now, I believe, and have for most of a year.
Yeah, signage was installed last spring, and the signage is a bit, it's a mix of tongue-in-cheek kind of new stuff just to get people's attention. Like, don't go here. Did you see the sign? Listen to that uncomfortable feeling in your belly. So those signs are up. There's also signs detailing, don't go beyond this area. These are the hazards. These are the risks. And that, the risks may not seem significant to you, but they are significant just based on training, as Jen had mentioned. Rocky SAR has a lot of training with swiftwater rescues, rope rescues. The average member of the public doesn't have that level of understanding that, you get into water that's knee deep, really cold, slippery all the time. The rocks, they're not going to change. And one misstep and you're over a waterfall of, significant height. Or you get caught in hydraulics because it's warm, it's summertime. It looks deceiving. It's just a small pool, not really realizing that something might pull you in, right? So.
Okay. And I'll also throw in, as Stifler Falls and Crescent Falls come to mind most because they're incredibly popular, the amount of parking, and often parking where people shouldn't be parking, makes it difficult for emergency services even to get to those locations because it can be so crowded. People parking on both sides of the road when they shouldn't be, and you don't even have the width of a vehicle almost to go down.
Yeah, Jen mentioned an incident August long weekend with a dislocated knee, and I drive a 3/4 ton pickup truck, and that I was almost hitting mirrors going down the road into Crescent Falls from probably about 3 or 4 kilometers back to get down to the falls before the first parking lot. And people were coming up. We had emergency services, Clearwater fire staff were trying to direct traffic to get trucks down the hill. And it was just, in all honesty, it was a nightmare. It extended the response time probably an easy 10-15 minutes. So somebody was in pain for a dislocated knee for a lot longer than was necessary.
Yeah, we do want the people out here, but we want them safe and protecting nature at the same time. So,
yeah,
well, hopefully this can share a few lessons with people. I'd like to move on to Abraham Lake specifically. Now, Abraham Lake is a huge, long lake, and when I was talking with Environment and Parks, they said on a good, warm summer day, it can get up to about +4 degrees. It is a very cold lake, and winds are on there pretty steadily. I know Rocky Search and Rescue teamed up with Clearwater Regional Fire last year to do a video and talk a little bit about Abraham Lake not being a recreation lake, in that it wasn't a lake for people to go onto, not encouraged to go onto. And if I remember right, the president of the Alberta Whitewater Association was on there, and she was encouraging people not to go on the lake because of high winds, frigid temperatures, strong currents, and honestly, a little bit beyond that, it's just an unpredictable lake. Like, things can spring up very, very quickly. There were some rescues, I believe, on Abraham Lake this winter, or not this winter, last summer. Steve, would you like to mention any of those?
I think, Jerry, just in touching on Abraham Lake, I think a lot of people don't realize that one of the points on Abraham Lake is called Windy Point, and it's there for a reason. And I'm really hoping Jen, she knows that area a lot better, can touch that. But Abraham Lake is 32 kilometers long. It's Alberta's largest reservoir. And you know what? It's pristine blue. It's a beautiful lake. And there's times that it can be dead calm, but it's a very, very deceiving lake. Again, I want to touch on it. Like, Abraham Lake you're probably 45, 50 minutes from any emergency responder getting out to you. And almost the whole entire length of the lake, there is no cellars. Almost you have to drive to either David Thompson, and I'm hoping again, Terry, Eric, Jen. Then other nearest cell phone would be probably Nordegg. I know you get service right around that Windy Point area for a bit, but go ahead, Jen.
Yeah, kind of from the dam to Windy Point, you get some service, and then again at the Klein River Bridge. If that's why a lot of people are stopped on the side of the road there. You can get a little bit of service there, but there's not a lot of service. With a kind of, did you have more to say, Steve, or?
Go ahead, Jen. I can jump in at any point.
Okay, cool. So with a lot of the people that were rescued off the lake this year, some of them, well, a number of them were in the lake for probably 3 hours before we were able to rescue them. Just because of the response time. After about 15, anybody who got like capsized were not able to self-rescue. After about 15 minutes, you start to lose use of your limbs and stuff, and you're just cold. So a lot of the people were pretty shriveled up and just holding on to their kayak or canoe or whatever it was to be able to stay afloat. Yeah, it takes a while for us to get there, and the cold really sets in, and that self-rescue is not a possibility.
Over the summer, Jerry, in cooperation, I believe, and I think Eric knows this, but with public lands, there was a new road that was put in for emergency access onto Abraham Lake, and that's to speed up the response. I think it's good for the public to know that A, that's there, and B, just be cognizant. Don't plug that road up because emergency services may need that. That's a center access point for us to access the lake, and like Jen touched on, the response times are already lengthy, and time is critical.
And I will add, I am being sent pictures from parking out along the lake because it's been a busy winter actually, and people are actively using that emergency ramp right now as a parking lot, unfortunately. So hopefully by summer we get something straightened out to let people know they cannot park there.
Yeah, there's currently some signage on that already, but hopefully we can get some bigger signs. Maybe we can put something from Rocky Sar in there too, or fire, or just really get a bunch of signage on there.
So how many water rescues on Abraham Lake were performed this last year?
I'm trying to think of the exact number. I don't have it off the top of my head, but kind of water calls and ATV calls are our highest call volume. And last year we had 49 calls total. So I'm not sure how many exactly were on Lake Abraham, but I think between 15 to 20 of our calls last year were water related.
Okay.
I know that, like you said, Jerry, there was a couple bigger calls that went on Abraham Lake. I know there was a massive joint operation, which saw a successful rescue of a family, I believe a mother, a father, and a child, if I'm not mistaken, that were in the water for a very lengthy period of time, and were rescued, and I believe full recovery from my knowledge that I've got. But they were in the water, and if it wouldn't have been for a passerby highway watching them capsize and getting to David Thompson Resort and calling 911, we don't know, it might be a different outcome today. But if you think about it, passerby sees a canoe capsize, thinks about it, realizes they can't self-rescue, drives X amount of kilometers to call 911, and then the emergency responders have to drive, 2 hours-ish plus.
Right, and then we still have to get the boats on the lake and then get across the lake safely to them and then perform a rescue. So yeah, it's time consuming.
I think the big knowledge there for the general public is if you see somebody having trouble on the lake and there's more than one of you there, leave one person to watch where the people are while somebody else goes and gets help. That way, when we get there as a group, oftentimes conservation, sorry, Eric or Terry, I'm going to throw it at you guys too. You've been really quiet on this one, but oftentimes you guys get dispatched as well. If there's somebody there that's got visual eyes on somebody in the water, it really speeds the process up for all of us.
Yeah, Rocky Sar has also invested into a new spotting scope, or actually two of them. So with a bigger capacity. So hopefully that will also just help being able to locate the victims quicker.
And I don't think people understand that the shoreline changes daily out there as well, right? It's like as we're headed into July, the water keeps on dropping. And then after July, the water starts to rise. And I know people camp down there, for example, and they try to camp, they set up their RVs as close to the water as they can, but overnight that water can actually rise a couple of feet and be actually under their RV. My understanding is that the local commercial level towing truck was used a number of times this year because they had to get down and tow RVs out of water because it was too slippery for them to be able to move. Eric, do you know anything about that?
Yeah, I heard that one guy would drive out to Nordegg and park himself there, and if there's a call on Nordegg, it was I don't know who it was, but had a $200 flat rate for coming out and hooking up whatever it was that was stuck and getting you out. And we did have a few incidents of people, mostly at the Bighorn Dam, that were camping that got stuck by some of them, what we'll call floodwaters, but just the rising reservoir levels.
Yeah.
They got stuck, and luckily they all got out in time, but a couple of them had some damage to their trailers because it was pretty high by the time they got themselves out.
Or even if it's just wet, because that's sort of that silt turns into a slippery mess, and you can't even drive out on that very easily.
Yeah, a lot of people don't realize it's not just the level of the lake that's rising, is the water table is rising in conjunction with the lake. So as the soil gets saturated, it's also getting saturated as the lake comes up. So as it raises, that soil just gets worse and worse, and doesn't matter what kind of mud swamp or tires you got on, you're not getting out of there. It's gumbo, it's similar to prairie gumbo for folks who grew up out there. So it gets slicker and slicker, and it's just doesn't matter. I've seen multiple vehicles stuck trying to help each other out, and it's a lost cause.
Terry, do you have any comments on Abraham Lake before we move on?
No, other than some of the parking concerns that we've just been discussing, and the rising water levels. That's a big thing as well. So other than that, I think we've covered it all.
Okay. Well, we're going to move on to, this will be Terry talking, I think, more, traffic concerns. It's a beautiful drive out there.
That's correct. It is a beautiful drive, and it's a great highway for the most part. We have to remember that with the increased traffic comes a higher level of danger. Speeds seem to be really, really high on that particular stretch of road, especially Nordegg west to the Banff Park boundaries. People don't realize that there are sheep on the roads. There's lots of people parked on the side of the roads, which cause hazards. And once there is a crash, it's like everybody on this call has been saying, it's a long time for that emergency service group to get out there to do any sort of medical care or movement of vehicles once that crash has occurred.
Yeah. And we already mentioned some people their parking actually blocks roadways, whether that's access into Crescent Falls area, Stifler Falls. I did have, as I mentioned, Alberta Environment and Parks asked me to stop promoting back in end of June, beginning of July, because the Stifler parking lot is meant for 100 vehicles, and they did a parking count of 300 vehicles. Not just there, but they were parked along the highway, in the ditch, which in an ecological reserve, parking in the ditch on the grass is not a very good thing to be doing.
So parking, and people have to understand, parking on the shoulders, parking in the ditches is illegal according to the Traffic Safety Act. One of the things that we did do this summer is we worked closely with the integrated traffic team out of Black Falls and did 2 or 3 JFOs, Joint Force Operations, out there. And one of our focus points was going to be dealing with parking, but the parking situation was so crazy that it made it very difficult for us to even stop and deal with the parking. And a lot of the people that seem to be parking are gone on 3 and 4 hour hikes. One of the messages that I know that we are going to be pushing for next year, and I'm not sure, Eric, what your department's doing, is vehicles will be ticketed on the highways. The ditch is not as much of a concern, but we had an incident with a fire by Allstones, I think it was, Steve, is that correct? By Allstones, where we couldn't even get the traffic moving or the equipment in to get to the fire, because there was so much traffic that our vehicles that were abandoned on the side of the road and parked. So some of those things will be a focal point for the enforcement teams going forward for the coming summers. I'm not sure how we're going to deal with the excess parking if there's 300 vehicles parked in an area that can only accommodate 100, but we are going to take a really strong look at the safety aspect along that Highway 11 corridor moving into this summer.
Okay. We'll move on to OHV concerns. We are a very popular destination for OHV users. We have some amazing trails and great views along them. But we have had accidents and incidents, and we do every year, honestly, with OHV users. Some of the points that in talking with yourselves, the people mentioned is that they need to be prepared. They should not drive at night in the dark. That seems to be a common time for accidents. Drinking and driving comes up again, and high speeds. You're not in seatbelts, you're not encased in a safe vehicle, or even the side by sides. Those high speeds, those things turn over, and it's very easy to get hurt. And any comments on OHV safety?
Yeah, from my perspective, it's the drinking and driving. Folks seem to understand that in a motorized vehicle, like a truck or a car, they understand that drinking and driving is illegal, but they look at a quad, a dirt bike, a side by side, and it's a different mentality. It's, oh, 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 is okay. We're just out on the trail, we're in the bush, we're not hurting anyone. But a lot of the accidents that I've been to personally, they're always liquor related. It impairs your ability to react to things. These machines are very powerful. They're not like the P50s that I had when I was a kid. It's, these are 700, 800, 900 cc machines that got 6-inch paddles on them and, can cruise through muskeg, no problem. But if you're traveling at those speeds and those conditions, some of the trails can be really tight or they're dead ends and you don't know it's a dead end. And, and you had a few, you don't know that tree is coming, or you misjudge how low that tree is, and you clothesline yourself or get into a situation where you're stuck, you're out of control for some reason, and you end up hurting yourself for no reason, right? And quadding it can be a safe activity as long as you do everything by the book. This summer we noticed a lot of new riders out on all different kinds of machines. Not respecting closed trails, for example. At Bighorn, the Tertiary trails were closed all summer, but we had constant issues with guys trespassing on these coast systems. And, guys just out for a party, right? It's August long weekend, September, Canada Day weekend. Let's go nuts. That's not what it's about. If you want to go nuts, go to your campsite. Just don't do it on the trail. You're just inviting some kind of problem. And if you're out on the trail, it's an even longer response time once we figure out where you are, because sometimes guys don't know where they are. They're maybe at Bighorn Dam, they're on D2 is the junction that they think they're at, but they're nowhere near this junction. They're at a far different junction just because they're wayfinding. They don't know where it is, likely potentially because they're intoxicated and don't actually know where they are.
So just to dovetail into what Eric is saying, over the year or over the summer, we all saw a lot of, and I'm going to use the term intoxication, whether it be alcohol, but now we've got this marijuana legal problem that's out there as well. That, we've seen a lot of that as well over the summer. In conjunction with that, proper personal protective equipment, like wearing your helmets, wearing them properly, having a helmet on your head that's too big or too small and not done up properly in the event of an incident really isn't going to help you. It actually could hinder you more. Being prepared includes, having a first aid kit with you, some of the minor injuries that you can deal with out there, knowing where you are. Eric touched on that, but also keeping in mind that a lot of that West Country, again, and I know I sound like a broken record with this, does not have any form of communication other than satellite, spot, inReach, things like that. Your cell phones will not work. And keep in mind, the further people push back into the bush on these trails, they get in on a UTV or an ATV or a snowmobile and they push into the bush 25, 30 kilometers. Keep in mind that all emergency responders have the drive from wherever they're coming from to that staging area and then into where you are. So knowing where you are is important, and knowing how to communicate if something does go wrong or go sideways. And I mean, know the trail, plan ahead.
And one of the things, another just quick message is, don't override your level of expertise when you're riding. We have people coming in who have never been riding in the mountains, who come out and think that it's just like riding in the farm field behind their house. And the dynamics of riding in the mountains is very, very different. And we see a lot of people doubling on quads too, trying to go up trails that are really steep. And what ends up happening is the quad ends up rolling down over top of them because they are not meant for two people. So some lessons before you come out to the West Country would be a big benefit when riding in the mountains as well.
Yeah, good point, Terry. We do see from what I've seen is some kind of with alcohol involved, but then there's other ones where people are on a machine that are kind of too big for what their skill set or their riding capabilities. So we've seen injuries from ruptured spleens to broken ribs and broken arms, and yeah, usually the injuries are pretty significant when ATVs are involved.
And one other thing when we're talking about ATVs is, you know, your children all love to go riding ATVs. Again, I'm not sure if it was Eric or Steve that mentioned it. Make sure their equipment fits. Putting an adult helmet on a child and putting them in front of you on the front of a quad, doesn't matter how good a rider you are, all you have to do is hit a root or something, and those steering handles are going to take that child out that's sitting in front of you. So be conscientious of what you do with the children that are riding with you as well. And back to the size of the quads. Kids 10 years old shouldn't be riding 800 quads. They're too big. And riding quads without supervision, again, is not legal. It's not safe. Those children they need to be looked after, and looking after them from a kilometer away is not supervising them.
And I mean, honestly, OHVs are one of the most popular activities in Clearwater County, not just around Abraham Lake. We have huge stretches along the Forestry Trunk Road, down the Clearwater Trails Initiative near Caroline. There's a lot of area that people push back into that is very remote, and certainly can make it challenging for emergency services. Let's move on to wildlife. This might be more Eric's area, but this last summer we actually saw the Thompson Creek campground had to be shut down for a while because of wildlife.
Yeah, we had Thompson Creek. Thompson Creek's a bit of an anomaly. It seems to be a bit of a wildlife corridor itself. We do have a lot of bears traveling through there. And this summer we had one bear. It was featured fairly prominently. It was a grizzly bear that got on top of a garbage can and was trying to get into it. It's a bear-proof bin, so it wasn't successful. But that one moved on eventually. And then in its place came a black bear that did end up getting into a truck. The guy was storing his food, his garbage underneath the tonneau cover in his truck box. So the bear got into that, ate up everything that was in there, ripped apart his tonneau cover. He didn't report it, the individual. He just took off, went back to town. Somebody saw him leaving and reported it to the caretakers, but only after the bear had chewed on a few other vehicles and areas that places where people had been leaving some garbage out, or a few fire pits that had some garbage in the fire pit. We did try to trap that particular black bear, but we were unsuccessful. And then that particular bear, I think it moved away because we ended up having different bears come in later on, a couple weeks later, and we shut down again because these bears had shown not really any fear of people. They were more just interested in getting food. It was a bit of a late spring for us, and there was a lot of bears in the valley bottoms looking for snacks. And Thompson was a perfect spot coming out of the national park, just following their nose. And so they were unsuccessful, but they were exhibiting behavior that determined we needed to trap them. We ended up pushing them out of the park further down the highway, and we ended up successfully catching one that was not our target grizzly bear. And it was released back on site later on. But a lot of issues this summer with people leaving garbage out, just random campers, new campers, that's not much to do. Where do you go? National parks are closed, so they all came here. A lot of these folks just, in all honesty, clueless when it comes to safety for food storage. They left everything out, the entire camp kitchen underneath a bug tent. It's okay, we're camping nearby. But at 2 o'clock in the morning, you're asleep, the bear is walking around. There's a few incidents of bears coming through campgrounds in the middle of the day, random camps, not campgrounds, and just raiding everything. Fish and Wildlife dealt with those ones, my colleagues, and I believe that bear was put down. It was actively chewing on a cooler when they observed it first, is what I understand. But, and even this thing with deliberately feeding animals, I saw a photo from Thompson Creek. Our caretaker took it. They were parked behind the vehicle, and out the window they were dangling a brick of cheddar cheese to a black bear.
Oh.
And this is at the entrance to a campground where families like to come. Thompson Creek is a great destination. It's a beautiful little campground. And these folks were deliberately feeding a black bear because it's, beautiful. It's a cool animal. Why not? So just creating problems for other people down the road, because if that animal loses its fear, particular black bears, they'll go into campsites and they don't care if you're sitting there and there's smelly food nearby. They will go get it if they get the chance. And just folks trying to get that perfect picture, and I mentioned it before, for the Instagram, doing it for the gram. It's not cool. It's just, you're putting yourself at risk. You're putting the rest of the public at risk, especially with wildlife. They're unpredictable. They're not zoo animals. These things have a mind of their own. They're very smart animals. I have the utmost respect for them, and I wish the public would too. And it gets frustrating when you're constantly going to the same place for the same thing. We've tried education, we've tried ticketing, we've tried all sorts, and folks just did not seem to understand it. And it's, if you get hurt, again, a broken record. Emergency services are a long ways away, and people really hate it when I come in there as a conservation officer and I have to deal with the bear, and I tell them I might be putting this thing down based on the behavior it's displaying. Suddenly I'm a murderer, but I'm responding to what that bear is doing. And if that bear is eating somebody's food in a campsite and I manage to trap it and it fits a specific profile, then yes, I will put it down. So very challenging.
And oftentimes,
sorry?
You hit it right on the head. Oftentimes people don't realize the aftermath of them feeding a bear and getting any of these wildlife habitated a little bit to the human interaction, because then you have to go out there and now you have to deal with it. And then other people are angry with you for having to deal with it.
Very much so. And it's I've come to accept that as my career, that I potentially will be public enemy number one because I, put a bear down, or I might yell at somebody because they're parked on the side of the highway, middle of winter on a double solid, taking that beautiful selfie with the bighorn sheep in the background. And that sheep is just inching closer and closer to their vehicle, and they're not making any noise. So that fear of vehicles is gone from even the bighorn sheep. And if you hit a 300-pound animal with about 100 pounds of gear on its head, that's damage to your motor vehicle. And it's not damage to me. You might kill it if you hit it pretty hard, but it's not good, the outcome. We want these animals to survive. We want them to be out there. It's a beautiful wild spot. Why shouldn't they be there? Why shouldn't people be there as well? But at the same time, we need to respect them and their boundaries as well.
Okay.
I mean, with people pushing further into the backcountry, they're pushing into the wildlife habitat. And then they're upset that the wildlife is interacting with them. Well, remember that you're in their habitat.
Yeah, in particular out here, because it's once you get really past Nordegg, there's small little developments at the David Thompson Resort, and that's about it. The rest is a pretty wild spot.
So to wrap up, thank you everybody for sharing your experiences. To wrap up, Clearwater County, David Thompson Country, so much of it is a big wilderness area with a lot of wildlife. We didn't even talk about rivers this year, although honestly the North Saskatchewan River was quite full this past summer, so a lot of people stayed off of it most of the summer. But their water rescues have been a regular occurrence on the North Saskatchewan River as well. Something to keep a reminder of. But we are a wilderness area, and we have the wildlife to go with it. We have the cold water that goes with that, and we just want people to be prepared and aware. And many of these incidents, honestly, I think probably all of them could have been prevented, just with some planning, awareness, and some experience. Hopefully this provides some experience to people as well.
Jerry, the theme is, where adventure begins, right? We don't want to have it where adventure ends.
Yeah, we want everybody to come back and enjoy themselves again. It's a beautiful area. We're proud of it. Any final comments? We'll just go around really quick.
I got
Steve?
one here quickly before I lose connectivity, but we have an amazing group of first responders out Clearwater County and through the area, whether it be, and I'm not even going to name them all off because there's so many. The interoperability and the cooperation across the board is phenomenal and fantastic. The communication back and forth, I mean, lots of times we're talking to conservation or Fish and Wildlife to get eyes on a call quickly because they're out in different areas. We're talking with the CPOs. We're working back and forth with Rocky SAR, all the EMS providers, STARS Air Ambulance. I mean, we could go on forever. We have an amazing network of first responders in our area.
STARS is here a little too often, I think, though. Mm-hmm. we don't need them as much. I prefer they not have to come as much. Eric, any questions?
Maybe I'll go.
Yeah, go ahead.
If we can plan ahead and use Adventure Smart or apps like that and have a plan, tell somebody where you're going, research the trail you're going to be on, and also know how to use your phone or your InReach or Spot on your phone. Make sure you can use apps like Trail Forks or something like that, but also be able to send a pin of your location. And that's probably one of the most important things that you could get to Rocky SAR if you do need help.
Okay. Eric?
Yeah, just when you're out in the West Country, I know there's a slew of rules and regulations you got to follow. They're not that difficult. You know, when it comes to quadding, make sure you're licensed, registered, insured, make sure that license plate is mounted and visible. You're wearing an appropriate helmet for your size or your child's size. Ride on the trails that are open, not the trails that are closed. Respect the boundaries of wildlife, and understand that it's a remote spot and help is a ways away.
Okay, Terry.
Yeah, just to reiterate what everyone's been saying, we do have a beautiful area that we live and work in. One of the hardest things for emergency responders to do is go out and deal with incidents that are in the West Country when we know how far the travel time is to get there. Just be prepared in everything that you do prior to going out. Enjoy the West Country and slow down on Highway 11.
Okay, well, thank you everyone for participating. I think, I know this is a forecast, but I think 2021 is going to be pretty close to as busy. We're seeing this winter is already busy, and people still aren't going to be able to go other places that they might usually go to. And so I think we're going to see the same visitor traffic, but hopefully some education will help change the experience a little bit this year. So thank you everyone, and have a good afternoon.